Hello, everyone. Blessings to all. Praises to the Most High, Yeshua, and to the beautiful Holy Spirit. Earlier, I came on today and shared a video and talked about that the truth will set you free. That's the name of my last video post that I put out. And this is actually something that I came across by someone I follow, and it's truth be told, this is actually great. So I wanted to share this as well, and this is by Thoughts Camber in Action. It says, does it matter? What color am I? Yeshua, Jesus Christ, what color am I? So here we go.
Jesus, can you hear me? I'm desperate.
I can hear you, my son. I have always been listening.
Who are you? Welcome to Thoughts Camera Action. So today, we're discussing universal image of Christ. Now, before I go any further, I know this is a very controversial topic, so I need to say a few disclaimers. Now, when it comes to salvation, the image of Christ, or the color of Christ, or the melanin genetic makeup of Christ doesn't matter. However, when it comes to colonialism, the Eurocentric image of Christ has played a considerable part in colonizing nations and minds. For example, when we go to countries all over the world, we will often see an image of a white Jesus and a white Mary, which we know to be historically and biblically inaccurate. Let's say David Beckham, popular, well-known, respected footballer. But could you imagine if in 30, 40, 70 years' time, non-European nations decided that they would change David Beckham from a European into a Chinese person and disassociate any history or any evidence that said the opposite? This is similar to what's happened with Christ. Oftentimes when people present the true image of Christ based on history and the Bible passages, they are often rebutted.
I think you are suggesting that there's some pretty good historical anthropological evidence suggesting that Jesus just probably was black. Am I?
Usually people will say things like this: it doesn't matter what color Christ is, which is true for salvation purposes.
I just want to say that when God said he was going to make man in his image, he did not mean white, green, or any color. It was supposed to be spiritually like him.
Very good.
And that's what is important.
Yes, well.
But unbeknowingly or unconsciously, what they're actually doing is defending the white image of Christ and silencing any opposition which brings truth or awareness.
Indeed.
Well, what
And it
color
doesn't matter what
color has Jesus been throughout your childhood?
White. And
What
I
color-
think that's ridiculous
What
because,
color was his mother?
you know, who knows? And I don't think anyone...
So stay tuned to this video. I'm just going to explore the topic, provoke a bit of thought. God bless.
It is I, Jesus. I heard your prayer, and I've come to help you.
You're not Jesus.
God is white. Isn't it obvious? Well, that is obvious, but we don't know if it's obvious that God is white. The images of Jesus that are on prison walls and churches throughout the world are not historically correct, because history teaches us that Jesus was born in a region where the people had color.
I am.
But doesn't Jesus look a bit more like...
Oh, I see. You thought I'd be white.
Kind of, yeah?
Look at these telling images from a Jewish synagogue in Syria. They were painted in the 3rd century, less than 200 years from the time of Jesus. They're the earliest pictures of Jewish people in the world, and fashions back then changed slowly.
The kind of hairstyle that you get, it's short, it's curly, it's, if you like, Afro in style, and this seems to be almost uniform in the way that Jesus depicted there. It's unlikely that Jesus' skin tones were white in the traditional, as you get it in much of the traditional art, as you get it in the Hollywood Jesuses. It's more likely had darker skin tones, and is much more likely to have looked something like this.
Just because it makes you feel uncomfortable doesn't mean it has to change. You know, I mean, Jesus was a white man too, but you know, it's like he was a historical figure. I mean, that's a verifiable fact, as is Santa. I just want the kids watching to know that.
On that, Kelly is definitely just incorrect. She's misinformed.
Anyone who has studied the Bible and anyone who knows about the heritage or the roots of Jesus knows that he was a dark-skinned person and probably wasn't a white man. It's not probably was. He wasn't of the darker persuasion.
Yeah, he certainly didn't come from,
right?
He didn't come from Europe. He didn't come from North America. That's just not where he came from. So Jesus isn't white. That is just wrong.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know what to tell you. I was born in the Middle East 2,000 years ago. The Bible's very clear about that. It should be pretty obvious I don't have blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yes, sir. So we have to tell our own stories. I mean, even Jesus is white. And you believe it. But it's okay, because how you were framed, if you taught something from the day you were born, and your mother taught you that, your father taught you that, it's real.
This picture has been in my family for as long as I can remember. When I was a baby, I don't know what I saw first. My mama, my papa, or this Jesus. Now, he's the one I know and love, so let's close the subject.
You never look at your mom and your dad as liars. But their mother taught them the same thing, because that's the kind of history that's put out. I believe our history books in the U.S. is all white American history. Culture that's been borrowed from other nations.
Jesus was black, the Bible would have said so.
But it does say so.
What are you talking about?
I read about it. It's in Revelation chapter 1, verse 14. I read about it in Muhammad Speaks. It says, his hair is like wool, and his eyes are like flame of fire.
Well, Lord have mercy. It sure do say that, don't it?
And see, Mom, look at that hair, like wool, ain't it? And look at them eyes, red like fire.
Just, you're not really what I was expecting, that's all.
Would you like me to fetch white Jesus instead?
Oh, could you?
So you believe God is white? Look at that. That's a handsome young man, ain't it? Now, if God looked like Isaac Hayes, you think his son would look like this?
So, black people are a...
Cursed!
No! There is no white Jesus. It's just me. Do you want my help or not?
Yeah, I suppose so.
And I was in there, and I was like, what the hell's going on? They were like, James Bond could not be played by Idris Elba because Idris Elba is a black man and James Bond is white. I was like, well, actually, James Bond is a fictional character, and so we can play by anyone because it is fiction. And they were like, well, when you think about it, James Bond was based on a real man who was white, and so he should be played by a real white man. And I was like, well, that just doesn't make sense, because if you think about it, Jesus was technically a black man, but he gets played by a white man. So I don't know what your point is, because that's never stopped me from receiving my blessings. I don't know what you...
After all, black or white, we're both still Christians, right?
I'm guessing now's not the time to tell you I'm Jewish.
Thank you for watching Thoughts Camera Action. Before you go in...
I've been a teacher for 25 years with private and parochial schools in this country, and I have seen what brown-eyed people have done as compared to what blue-eyed people do.
Welcome to Thoughts Camera Action. So today, we're looking at racism. Is this just an automatic, innate impulse, or is this something that is taught? And if so, can it be untaught?
And it's perfectly obvious. And if I didn't believe it before this morning, you should have been here this morning when we brought these people in here.
Feeling discriminated against, the blue-eyed audience members were visibly upset.
She was rude to us, all of us. Yelled at us, called us names, pushed us aside. She was rude.
This one is say, why doesn't Jane have a green collar on? She's got blue eyes.
Because I've learned to act brown-eyed. I have a brown-eyed husband and 3 brown-eyed children.
Why did you?
And the message in this room is, act brown-eyed and you too can take off your collar. Act intelligently and you too won't lose your collar. None of you have acted intelligently yet.
I had a girlfriend in school who was blue-eyed. She was so stupid. She was always copying off of my papers. These people were so rude and so noisy today, we couldn't hear ourselves even talk. It was ridiculous.
I started the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise because Martin Luther King Jr. had been one of our heroes of the month in February in my 3rd grade classroom, and he was dead at the hands of an assassin. I hate to talk about this because every time I talk about it, I remember how it felt that day. I was going to have to go into my classroom and explain to my students why the adults in this country had allowed somebody to kill hope. Because Martin Luther King, for me, was hope for this country. I decided that the next day I was going to do what Hitler did. I was going to pick out a group of people on the basis of a physical characteristic over which they had no control, separate them according to the color of their eyes, treat one group badly and treat the other group very well, and see what would happen. Eye color and skin color are caused by the same chemical, melanin. There is no logic in judging people by the amount of a chemical in their skin. Pigmentation should have nothing to do with how you treat another person. But unfortunately it does. Give me a child at the age of 8, let me do that exercise, and that child is changed forever. Give me a child at the age of 8, let me do that exercise, and that child is changed forever.
The following clip is of a southerner who learned to shed racism by thinking for himself.
I have trouble telling this story. As a 10-year-old, I got on the bus from my school. Everybody was black. Except for one seat, there were no seats, and a black lady was sitting beside that seat. And this lady said, I'll never forget it. She said, honey, you can sit right here. And she patted the seat. She said, honey, twice. Honey, it's okay. You can sit. Elaine, I sat in that seat like this. I didn't move a muscle for 3 miles. I got off first. I went home. I didn't tell my parents I'd sat by a black woman. Finally, I decided I'd say something. I said, John, let me ask you something. How come black troops in World War II fought so miserably? They surrendered, they didn't fight very hard. He said, Frank, where'd you hear that? I said, my father told me that. Now, John could have said, your father's an idiot. If he'd said it, the conversation is over. I never would have gone anywhere. He didn't say that. He said, Franklin, I don't think you and I know enough about that to discuss it intelligently. Save my face, save my father's face. He said, but let me ask you something. You have anybody fighting World War II? I said, yeah, I had 2 uncles. One was in the Philippines. One was at Pearl Harbor when it was bombed. He said, is that right? He said, I did too. I had 2 uncles fight World War II. I said, great. He said, you know where we eat lunch? I said, you don't eat with me. He said, that's right. My uncles and I, who fought in World War II for freedom and justice and pursuit of happiness, we get on a bus and we ride 2 miles out of town to eat lunch because none of the stores we shop in will let us eat. And my stomach got tight, and I didn't want to hear any more. He said, did you go to the bathroom? I said, yeah, I go to the bathroom. He said, where do you go? I said, I go anywhere I want. He said, Moses and I, we get on a bus. We ride 2 miles out of town to go to the bathroom because we can't go anywhere. And I listened for the rest of the 3 hours. When I got to my dorm, I lay down and cried. I sobbed for 3 hours. Next day I went in and talked to the dean of men. I said, it's crazy. We're studying English and math and science. And right across the street over there, we got people, citizens we don't even know. It didn't make sense.
How many of you people of color can take off the collar that we have put on you? How many of you can take off your color? But if a black male refused to follow your orders, or your husband's orders, or your father's orders on the street, you would not see that as being highly principled. You would see him as being an uppity nigger.
Well, we can see where this is going. She's saying that everybody has racism in them. It's not really about the eye. She's trying to teach about racism. But she can't get away from the fact that God created the races, and you are going to be different. You can't help it.
God
to be
created
like that.
one race, the human race, and human beings created racism. God
to be
created
like that.
one race, the human race, and human beings created racism.